Interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. Tony, the Cowboys are out of the playoffs. Give their fans some good news.
I'm Tony Kornheiser. Relax. You got Dak under contract.
Yeah.
Don't worry about a thing.
Yeah.
He's good.
Are we going down this road today? We're not going down the all Cowboys all the time. That's not this show. We don't care that much about the Cowboys. We don't do that, do we?
Well, we're not going to go all Cowboys, but I think we're going to have to start with the Cowboys and the Niners.
Okay.
I mean, don't you think we're going to have to start with them in that regard? Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, the Bengals bounce the Bills. Patrick Mahomes is hurting and the Eagles blow out the Giants. But we begin, as I predicted 30 seconds ago, we begin with the 49ers beating the Cowboys last night, 19-12. So let's get right to it, Wilbon. Is your lead here about the Niners winning or the Cowboys losing?
The Niners winning. I mean, this is what the Niners do. They play great defense, and they showcase these offensive players, right? And you just saw that catch that Kittle made, which is the highlight, the video highlight of the weekend. That's, equals like 3 or 4 dunks, I guess, if we go across sport. And then, I mean, you've got each one of these guys. Deebo Samuel didn't do anything spectacular yesterday. Maybe they're saving him till next week. But it's the 49ers. They look like the best team to me, Tony, in the NFC right now. But there's no criticism coming from me about the Cowboys. So I'm not going to waste any time because I thought the Cowboys played pretty well. Dak's turnovers, okay, they were unfortunate. They weren't costly in particular. The Dallas Cowboys weren't good enough. They weren't as good as San Francisco by that much in San Francisco, Santa Clara, whatever. So I come to praise primarily the 49ers, not bury Dak and the Cowboys.
Very good Julius Caesar reference by you. You weren't even an English major. I'm going to agree with you that the lead is the Niners winning. Mike, I'm the guy who sat here 11 or 12 weeks ago, the day after the Christian McCaffrey trade, when the 49ers were 3-3, and I said they're going to go to the Super Bowl.
You did.
I could get lucky 2 years in a row.
Clap. You did.
I mean, I could talk about Dak Prescott's interceptions. I could talk about the fact that Dallas only scored 1 touchdown. But this isn't Tampa Bay on the other side of the ball.
Right.
This is the best defense in the NFL. They hold people to 16, so they held the Cowboys to 12. Like, people sort of have to understand something here. I don't want to slam the Cowboys. They haven't done well in the playoffs in almost 30 years. If you want to take them out for that, take them out for that. But they lost to a better team. They lost to a team, the only team still playing that has covered 2 weeks in a row. San Francisco is a high-quality team. The issue for San Francisco in the next game, and if there's a next game after that, is Brock Purdy. He is a third-string quarterback, a rookie quarterback. He's the last person drafted. And yet in the 2 playoff games he's played, Mike, he's gone for over 200 yards. And yesterday he had no turnovers.
He didn't make mistakes.
I don't know if that's going to happen against Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But he's been in there long enough. He's 7-0.
Tony.
So you know what, Mike? Somebody on that team is coaching him up.
They are. And let me mention this, too. The Cowboys didn't have Tony Pollard, who is now their number one offensive threat after he got hurt.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that takes away Dak's biggest weapon. Anybody want to doubt that? They're crazy. They haven't been paying attention. I thought the Cowboys played pretty darn well yesterday and lost to a better team.
All right.
So
other team's better.
That about wraps
the other team's better.
How about them Cowboys?
Yeah.
In yesterday's early game, the Bengals looked right at home in the Buffalo snow. Joe Burrow threw 2 touchdown passes and characterized the game as domination from start to finish. Wow. On the Bills sideline, Josh Allen got chewed out by a receiver, Stephon Diggs. Tony, were you more surprised by how good the Bengals looked or how, ordinary the Bills were?
Yeah, I mean, I think that question is the 2 sides of the same coin. I think you have to begin the answer in the way that Joe Burrow did, which is that Cincinnati dominated Buffalo. Burrow was out there. It was 14-0 in a heartbeat. Burrow on those 2 drives was 9 for 9 for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. And you got the feeling right away, oh no. I mean, Buffalo was on its heels. Is this going to be like the Giants and the Eagles? So it was really important that Buffalo then came back, went the length of the field, and Josh Allen ran it in from the 1. You say, okay, we got a game. No, it was no game, Mike, because Cincinnati came right back, went all the way down the field in 14 plays, used up about 8 minutes of clock. They had to settle for a field goal because the Chase catch in the end zone was ruled not a catch, didn't hold on. But they made their point. They made their point. We're in this game with you. We're better than you. Before this game, if people said that Cincinnati was going to lose, it was because their offensive line was degraded and nobody was playing, and Burrow would get sacked 100 times. Got sacked once for 2 yards. The offensive line of Cincinnati and the defensive line dominated Buffalo, and they had no answer.
And Tony, that's, of course, a big problem. You said this, the better team, and even if you don't look at it as domination, and I thought it was, the better team won this game. Cincinnati's a better team than Buffalo right now. The question is what is Buffalo missing? Maybe they need a more dynamic runner to go with Josh Allen if they're going to play that way. Perhaps that is part of what they've got. Maybe they're not imaginative enough. In that case, people are going to point at coordinators or maybe even the head coach. Though people should shut up with the notion that it's time to make a change on the sideline in Buffalo. Just stop. People are so knee-jerk, overreactive after every single NFL game. The better team won that game. And Cincinnati has been better this year and last year. And part of it is Joe Burrow may be the best quarterback in the league right now. That's very possible. I know a healthy Patrick Mahomes would like to have something to say about that, but we ain't going to get a completely healthy Patrick Mahomes. But with Joe Burrow, Tony, and if you can't get to him, if you can't pressure him, and he has the time that he had against Buffalo, Cincinnati is better.
Let me just tell you one thing. You were looking around wondering what they were missing. They were missing Von Miller.
What?
They were missing their closer.
Missing
that
Von
had a
Miller.
big effect on the game, but this has to be said. They were at home. They had snow, and they had a quarterback who runs well and can run to contact. All the conditions were right for Buffalo to win, and they did not win, and they got beat soundly.
They did.
So maybe that window, not closed, but crowded now with people like Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Crowded now. The Kansas City Chiefs, speaking of an AFC team, held on to beat Jacksonville on Saturday. Might have been a different ending if Jacksonville hadn't fumbled on the 6th with 5:33 left in the game, but that's done. What's not done is the pain in Patrick Mahomes' right ankle. Mahomes was out there in the second half at a clear reduction in movement and speed. Wilbon, how much does Mahomes' injury diminish your confidence in the Chiefs?
Completely.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Completely. Patrick Mahomes, the guy I'm going to take above Burrow if healthy is Patrick Mahomes. He's the guy I'm going to take above everybody in the NFL right now at that position.
Correct.
Patrick Mahomes.
Correct.
But Tony, listen, if you listened to quarterbacks, and you and I have been in a lot of locker rooms in our lives, we've seen what guys are like after a high ankle sprain in the hours after and in the days after. And we listened yesterday to people on television like Boomer Esiason and Phil Simms, and when they talked about not being able to walk on Tuesday and Wednesday. I mean, they're not making this stuff up. They know what this is like. They've suffered these injuries. The question is, what is Patrick Mahomes going to be able to even do by Friday? Luckily, he gets an extra day because they played Saturday. And then is he going to be able to do any, Tony, of the impromptu things that he does, the improvisational theater that Patrick Mahomes puts on? Can he do that? Or you going to, and people say, oh, maybe he'll be better because he'll be restrained. What? I'm not buying that at all. Not at all.
No. I mean, Joe Burrow right now is playing the position of quarterback the way it has always been drawn up. Patrick Mahomes plays it in a different way. Improvisational theater is a wonderful phrase for Patrick Mahomes. He's the best guy out there. This is why it's hard for me to lose my confidence in him, because I have this confidence that somehow he will, through a miracle, be out there and be great. And if you tell me he'll be out there even hobbled, even if he's hobbled, I'm going to say that gives Kansas City a chance, because I believe anytime he's on the field, they have a chance, even though I do, and as do you, we like Cincinnati in the game, and we would have said that last week, and I understand that. The thing about Kansas City that you have to concede is this is Patrick Mahomes' 5th straight AFC championship game. This guy has done it. We're not wondering.
That's right.
This guy has done it. But I think, Mike, I don't think they've completely recovered from the loss of Tyreek Hill. Kelsey is great. Kelsey's capable of catching 12, 13, 14, 15 passes in a game. But the other people watch film too, and they know how to coach. And if they can take Kelsey away a little bit and Mahomes is hobbled, then what do? If Mahomes is hobbled,
they got enough weapons.
Do?
And Chad Henne was pretty good, Tony. We shouldn't get out of this segment. But
he was.
Chad Henne, for a backup quarterback to play on that stage, at that level, he was good. But He ain't Mahomes.
Let's take a break. Coming up, why wasn't Giants-Eagles a tighter affair?
And number 1 and number 2 go down in college basketball.
Trying to find out what's popping with the peeps. Let me see what's first. If I can read it.
See that alliteration? That must
Here
be an
we go.
English major thing.
You guys said Giants-Eagles would be the closest game of the weekend. What happened?
Yeah, Jalen Hurts happened. That's what happened. Huh? I mean, he says he's not 100%. God bless him. I'm glad he didn't appear to suffer any more obvious damage to the shoulder or anything else. But, we both have thought he was the MVP or no lower at any point than the runner-up for MVP. So the question here was, would he be lesser? And if he's lesser, the Giants would have a chance in this game. He wasn't lesser. He was morer. And the Giants had no chance. None.
Yeah, so we got that wrong. We overrated the divisional factor. I turned that game off pretty early. At 14-0 when the Giants got the ball back and did nothing with it, I knew that game was over. And it was. It was a wonderful celebration of Jalen Hurts. And I've thought he's the MVP since week 4 of the season. I think he's the MVP now. I will say this. When your coach compares you to Michael Jordan, that's a little dicey. Because Michael Jordan at the moment has only 6 more championships than Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
And then I would also say that there was a period of time when Dabo Swinney compared Deshaun Watson to Michael Jordan. How did that work out?
Yeah.
So you want to be careful when you compare somebody to Michael Jordan. But that game, that's who the Eagles were the first 6 weeks of the season. And if they're back to being that, and if Jalen Hurts is back to running without fear to set up passing, they are tough. We both like San Francisco, but Philadelphia is tough to beat under those conditions, right?
When you say you want to be careful, by being careful, I would suggest, don't say it, damn it. Don't compare him to Michael Jordan. Don't be stupid. But everybody now has to be involved in hype. Give me a bowl of that hype. Let me have a cup of that hype. Let me hype something by overstating it. Jalen Hurts is the MVP, all right, to me, still. And because of what he did in Philadelphia under tough circumstances in a tough division. I'm not going any further than that just yet.
Tough division. 3 teams in the playoffs this past weekend.
Yeah.
No other division had 2. They had 3. Here we go. More noteworthy college basketball loss, number 1, Houston, or number 2, Kansas?
I think Kansas, Tony, the Houston game, it was interesting that, even their staff was talking about how this was just an off night. An off night for them. And you can go with that. Kansas, we left the weekend. We went into the weekend, you and I, saying, this won't happen again. And it happened again. And when it happens with that big Jayhawk on the floor, there's reason to be concerned. I know Houston and Kelvin Sampson lost at home as well. But I'm going to say the Jayhawks' loss was a little more concerning to me. What about you?
I don't even think this is close. I don't think it's noteworthy, even though an unranked team in Temple beat Houston, because every number 1 team has lost this year very, very quickly. I think Houston was number 1 and lost once before. So that's not noteworthy. Kansas is noteworthy. We both said there was no way TCU would beat them. TCU pounded them in Kansas.
Yeah.
This is the first time, Mike, I want to get the date right. This is the first time since 1989 that Kansas has lost consecutive games in the state of Kansas. Kansas State beat them at Kansas State. TCU beat them by 23. By 23 at home in Kansas.
Hear that often.
I expect there to be GoFundMes to get Bill Self to take the Texas job at this point. Speaking of which, here's what they've got coming up, Mike.
They got
coming up in a row.
Stretch, 5 games.
At Baylor, a ranked team. Kentucky, speaking of GoFundMe. Kansas State, who already beat them, ranked team. At Iowa State, ranked team. Texas, ranked team. That's 5.
hard.
They could lose most of those 5.
Yeah, and they're in the toughest conference. Toughest conference in the country is the Big 12. It's not even close.
Far.
Don't even want to hear the objections from the ACC and the Big East and the Big 10 because they're not close to the Big 12. Kansas has to figure out what this is now. I thought I'd just see if you were listening.
Big East.
By tossing the Big East.
Georgetown's lost 83 in a row.
Don't do that.
Yeah, stop.
Don't
mention the Big East. Enough email. Let's take one. Kansas approaching Georgetown. Let's take one last break.
It's going to be locked down like Fort Knox. That he was able to come back and play in the second half and get it done. George, start there. Do you find yourself leaving the game more impressed with KC or a little worried for KC?
Tony, unfortunately, I side with a little worried for KC because the Bengals already gave us the blueprint of what they can do to Kansas City with Josh Allen and the Bills, which is keep him in the pocket. And the only guy who's more successful than Mahomes outside of the pocket is Josh Allen. He had 9 touchdowns. Mahomes had 7 when throwing 113 passes outside the pocket this year. So I'm not feeling great about it.
We saw what Cincinnati did to Allen this week. Woody Page, impressed or worried?
I'd be worried if I were Kansas City because they're horses for courses and they're teams for oppositions. And the Bengals have figured out how to beat the Chiefs in the last 3 games they played against them. And I think that we could see that again, that they've got to be worried that if your quarterback and Patrick Mahomes is not 100% and he has to take a shot in order to play in the game, that you're going to have some problems against the Bengals because Joe Burrow is in great shape.
Harry Lyles, you find yourself saying 5 straight AFC championship games. That's impressive, or are you just worried about Mahomes here?
I mean, it's certainly impressive that he stuck it out and stayed in that game, especially because it turned him into a pocket quarterback. But as George pointed out, he threw 113 passes from outside the pocket. That was more than any other quarterback in the NFL. And we know the one thing that is the most beautiful about Patrick Mahomes' game is his ability to improvise. And when you take that ability away, he's still a really, really good quarterback, but it does take away from the magic that is him.
Frank, what did you see from Mahomes over Jacksonville?
Yeah, and his ability to improvise is what makes him great. But there was kind of a Michael Jordan quality to it, where you're having one of the best players in the league injured, still going out and playing, but not just playing, but still being effective. And let's give Chad Henne a little bit of credit here. They dusted him off in the attic. He marches right down the field. It tells you just how well coached and how well prepared the Kansas City Chiefs are.
Well, Chad Henne came in too and made it 98 yards. Did anything? Wow, that just got. Frank, you used a banned phrase on this show, but I'm going to allow it in this instance because we're talking about an MVP Super Bowl winning quarterback with the comparison to a certain player of yore. We'll move on. The most impressive team of the weekend, there was the Bengals, and there was the Philadelphia Eagles. Did that game end questions about Hurts and the Eagles, the way they dominated the New York Giants? Frank, start with you.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to think of how many times the Giants have ever trailed 28-0 out of any game, much less a playoff game. But this guy right here, Jalen Hurts, was terrific. You know, they had design runs for him. Everyone was worried about his shoulder. He had never been on a team that had won a playoff game before. That defense is tough. You've got to love him because he's a leader. He goes out. He backs up the talk. He was terrific.
George Dano.
Tony, the Philadelphia Eagles and the San Francisco 49ers have the 2 best rosters in the NFC, and we're proving that out now here over the playoffs. Jalen Hurts' injury was something we all worried about. He showed us that he can be the old Jalen Hurts again. They're as dynamic a team as we have in the sport. No surprise they'd beat the Giants.
Woody Page.
No more calls, Tony. We have a winner. People had wondered about the Eagles, the way they started out the season, and say, at what point are they going to break down? Then when Hurts got hurt, everybody began to say, well, what can they do now to actually be a championship-type team? They proved to everybody yesterday they have the defense, they have a quarterback who's healthy again, they got the home field advantage. San Francisco going to Philadelphia is not going to be any fun for a West Coast team.
Harry Lyles Jr.
Yeah, I think they absolutely answered all these questions. And pound for pound, this is an incredible matchup. And a lot of people are going to talk about that Philadelphia offense versus that San Francisco defense. But to me, the key is going to be the Eagles' defense against Brock Purdy. They got 44% of pressures on Daniel Jones. If they're able to get that against Brock Purdy as well, to me, that could be the difference in that game.
Frank, real quick on Daniel Jones in New York in the year, which was a success, ending like it did, and now his future contractual.
Yeah, I'm not going to break the bank for him. I think he was good enough. You want him to come back. It's hard to find a quarterback